All right, welcome to Halitics on Tuesday. It is not an Arlen Tuesday. I had told you yesterday after the program with Carlos that we were going to have an Arlen Tuesday, but no Arlen Tuesday. Arlen Wednesday. I have him in my schedule. I was confused, and it's part of the reason I got a little bit of a late start today. Also, we do have in the room, we have our new addition, Dolly. So glad to have her. And she's warming up to me, which is really, really nice. She came over and licked my hand and actually seemed quite pleased to see me, which is really nice. You know, obviously feels good to have that. So really pleased to have the new dog in the family. And seeing we got a little bit, I am noticing this, a little slight bit of I guess a filter in the background, but as long as I'm clear, I guess it's okay if the background's a little bit foggy. Maybe we'll work at some point to give you a little bit better visual all the way across. I did kind of debate how to frame today's program. It is the 2-year anniversary of the Hamas attack at the Nova Music Festival, and of course that was the pretext Israel used to begin its genocide in earnest, really its final solution in Gaza, and also to crack down even harder than it had previously been in the West Bank. So it's just a horrific 2 years, bipartisan war crimes committed by this administration, by both, obviously both parties, the leaders of both parties. And we are here to try to make the case that we have to together. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be really, really, really hard. Somehow together, we have to build something different and better than what we have now. And is that possible? I mean, it has to be, right? What else can we do? I mean, we're in such terrible, terrible, terrible straits, I believe, and only some kind of radical change in government can take us where we really do need to go. So I'm hoping together we can get there. I'm hoping together we can do that. So far, maybe not so good, but we'll hopefully together working on this can get there. By the way, give me a call at any time, because again, this program is about solutions, working together, finding ways to make things just a little bit easier, to make life just a little bit richer, more fulfilling, more complete for really poor, struggling, working people. I read this article today. It was in the New Republic, I believe, that suggested that Democrats are perceived as a party that goes out of its way to help poor people, and the working class, blue-collar Americans are turned off by that because they work really, really hard just to barely survive. And they perceive, in large part because I believe of corporatist, billionaire-backed propaganda, that they're being bled dry, not by the elites, but by those who are even less well off than they are. So one of the takeaways from that is we should center the experiences of workers. And I certainly do. But I'm not going to, but I don't believe, as much as I challenge identity politics because I believe it pits people against each other who should be allies. I think, let's face it, poor people are often very hardworking. Poor people in this country are really the new working class to a very significant degree. And so I'm not going to, stop centering poor people, but I will continue, of course, to center workers in our society as well. 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. Ari wants us to call the U.S. Capitol switchboard, and I'll put in there why. I'm not clear what your reasoning is for that, Ari, great ally of the program. Yeah, 2 years from the attack by Hamas on Israel, tomorrow would be the anniversary of the invasion by the Israeli military of Gaza. Previously, they had basically just had it surrounded with barbed wire. peering down with snipers, taking pot shots periodically at the residents, the people of that small enclave. But now they, and for the past 2 years, have actually been occupying it completely, which has been a tragedy of extraordinary size and breadth in terms of the harm done. 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. Yesterday, we only reported an increase in 6 dead over the past 24 hours. I do have an update here from Anadolu Ajansi. They report, and again, the numbers are down a little bit because Trump really has been pushing Israel to stop killing Gazans. And, we were talking about this yesterday. Does Trump deserve any credit for this? And it's really tough for me to give it to him because, again, I see this as the serial killer who stops killing and then says, well, I get credit for not killing anybody, or who kills people more slowly. Obviously, we never should have gotten to this place. And, of course, Trump and Harris Biden are very much to blame. 106 Palestinians killed in 143 strikes in the last 72 hours. So basically 106 in 3 days. That's about 35, 36, if I do my math right. That is less, right, than we've seen, but still obviously ugly, horrible, wrong. And the only reason it's not even higher, of course, is because, let me get that there. We have a little bit of a problem with that square. We'll get the square up correctly, but yeah, because of the pressure now by Trump, you got to just slow this down. Now, I'm concerned that pressure will go very quickly. In other words, Trump will, and we've seen it before, of course, he loses interest in particular issues, particular areas, even if there's perhaps some concern he might have about an endless number of dead being reported, partly because I guess he's still hoping maybe that he'll get that Nobel Peace Prize. He has, such a short attention span, does Trump. He'll quickly find another shiny object to focus on. And, if there's a lot of pressure to let Israel keep killing Palestinians, then he'll fold to that. The other fear I have, and it's a bigger one actually, is that the pressure inside this country from the right, especially, we're talking about, the Turning Point folks who did turn a little bit, right? They were there for Dave Smith at the conference where Kirk spoke with Smith and a Zionist. They were there when Megyn Kelly talked about the pressure that Israel puts on even conservatives, even what she would call dyed-in-the-wool allies of Israel. Even they are attacked if they're insufficiently loyal. My fear is that with the media takeover that we're seeing by extreme Zionists of CBS, of TikTok, that there may be less pressure. The administration may feel a little less pressure from its base to change policy. And that may be what we're seeing here is, hey, pull back a little bit, Israel, stop killing for a little bit. Once the CBS News takeover is, completed, once TikTok is transferred to Ellison's people, then we're going to have a full-on propaganda blitz, full-on Hasbara blitz in support of the genocide. And maybe that's what they're waiting for. We'll see. Here are my numbers. Since October 7th, 2 years ago, Israel and the U.S. have killed a minimum of 67,100 Gazans, and that's an increase of nearly 1,000 dead since Friday. Now, we said the number of killings had dropped a little bit. Probably that big increase is due to just more people found, more bodies uncovered, more bodies found. And we have Trump and Netanyahu at well over 13,500 killed, and more than half likely women and children. 240-242-5646 if you'd like to join me. Hey, don't forget, click like, click subscribe. We are seeing the subscription numbers continue to tick up. I've been doing these shorts and they get big views, and every now and then somebody subscribes. Would love to see, though, there's nothing like word of mouth. So if you are an ally of Halitics, if you're a supporter, please tell friends, tell family, tell anybody you think would agree with what we're doing. Join us on Facebook. It's been a little less, I guess, contentious there. More people just posting stuff and letting it lie, which maybe is better. I love the back and forth. I love the dialogue, the discussion, but unfortunately, it's getting contentious. It gets contentious there too, which I'm not loving. I don't love that. Yeah, click like. There you go. There's the thumbs up. Any engagement at all with our videos makes a difference. Helps us cut through. Helps us cut through the algorithm. It's just that simple. Somebody said logarithm the other day to describe the algorithm. I thought that was an interesting way to put it, and may well be fair too, because logarithmic is how you do math involving exponents. So we're hoping to see logarithmic growth here by cutting through the algorithm. Am I optimistic? I'm not really optimistic. I think to the extent we have a reason to feel some hope for the future, it really is in the Mamdani campaign. I know some leftists really don't like him. I think Revolutionary Blackout Network, I have a lot of respect for those guys. I really do. I think Nick Cruz does a great job. I think his analyses tend to be spot on. I think his cynicism about Mamdani as a potential change agent, his doubt that Mamdani is really, truly a leftist, is committed to supporting poor, struggling, working New Yorkers and to stop supporting Israel. I think Cruz's doubts are fair. I think the bigger fear is it's just going to be endless pressure from every side on him to tone down his message, to tone down his actions, not to pursue the policies, which we really must have. We need to make life just a little bit better in this country and in New York City specifically. I think that's the bigger fear that I have, not so much that Mamdani isn't sincere, which I think was a fair leveling, right? A fair charge against Obama, right? Maybe he wasn't as sincere as we hoped. I think Mamdani may be relatively sincere, but the pressure from Wall Street, from the corporate elites in New York, from the financial elites, as we mentioned, Wall Street, from the law firms, and from the media, from the New York Times, is just going to be maybe too much for him to buck, from within his party as well. The latest poly market numbers, I was pleased to see this morning, back up to 89% likelihood according to the betting markets, which means you got to bet a lot on Mamdani to win a little. Cuomo with just over 10% in this survey. I guess that means you bet $1, you get 9 back if you win. If he wins, if he wins. So you bet $1, you get about 8, 9 back. Under this market, it means just about the opposite. If you bet on Mamdani, you got to bet about $9 to get 1 back, right? So pretty skewed in Mamdani's favor. They're pretty confident he's going to win, and the numbers had ticked down yesterday, but now, as you can see, all the way to the right, practically the highest they've been. And I'm not really clear what, moves those betting markets. There haven't been any polls lately. That's the only thing I could really base my vote. My bet would be based on the polling. There haven't been polls in a month. Maybe the fundraising numbers announced by Cuomo that was reported on by the New York Times today didn't blow anybody out of the water. They weren't as much as people had expected. There was a thought that with Adams out of the race, the elites, the business elites, would put a lot more money into the Cuomo campaign in the hopes that he would be able to, gin up enough support from former Adams supporters and maybe peel off some from Sliwa that he could somehow prevail. that apparently didn't pan out as well as was hoped, and that caused the numbers to bounce back a little bit on Polymarket for Mamdani. That's the only thing I can come up with. Certainly the media continues to bash Zohran. The New York Times, I get it. New York Times, really well written. A lot of people, if you're, highly educated professional class in New York City, you probably went to school with people who have worked there. I did. A friend of mine from college who spent many years reporting for the Washington Post, excellent writer, moved over to the Times recently. And so we know people who work there. Many of us do, from this milieu. And we respect them. We know they're smart. They were smart in school. They were smart in high school, college, grad school, wherever you met them. They were smart. They were caring, good writers, of course. So we're thinking, hey, they write for this newspaper. It must have something good going for it. They tended to be liberal or vaguely liberal. But at some point you have to say, well, but what are they actually doing? What are they actually presenting? What opinions are they trying to evoke? What reaction are they trying to evoke in their readers? And it's a reactionary one. It's a pro-Trump one. It's a pro-Andrew Cuomo one. It's a pro-Israel, anti-Palestine, anti-life one. That is what the New York Times is about. Protecting elites. Where do we go with that? I still rely on it for actual data, facts, information, but I also read it with a very, very jaundiced eye. And I think that's what we have to do. Not quote it, not say, well, the Times says this, so therefore it's true, but, well, the Times says this, and therefore it might be true. Read this. Mamdani is more foe than friend in the suburbs, even among Democrats. And the fear-mongering is, oh no, if Mamdani wins, this is a gift to the Republicans. They'll be able to use Mamdani as an albatross hung around the neck of the Democratic Party. If we want to defeat Trump and the Republicans and MAGA next year, the New York Times is telling you, if we're all on the same page here, right? We all want to defeat MAGA. We don't want those ICE troops, those armed thugs beating people up, knocking heads in the streets. How terrible that is. We don't want law firms being extorted by Trump. Because those are the concerns you think the New York Times is trying, because they're not going to say, well, if we want to stop the killing in Gaza, which is my concern, my primary, if we want to end the climate holocaust, or at least begin the process of dismantling the fossil fuel economy-based economy in which we all live and are dying as a result of, those are my concerns. The New York Times isn't talking about that because they know the Democrat Party is no ally of peace, no ally of the environment. But they know also that the New York Times isn't going to be sending armed thugs the way Trump is. Now, the Democrats may be just as big deporters. They may treat many immigrants as badly as Trump, but it won't be quite as overtly cruel, as overtly brutal as Trump is. So their message is, hey, if we're going to defeat this scourge, Trumpism, we better be really careful about that Mamdani because he's a foe. He's going to turn off Democratic voters. He's going to turn on moderate voters. Oh, no. Trump is going to call every Democrat out there a Mamdani lover. Heavens to Bitsy. I've got to clutch my pearls. It's so scary for me. That's the message the New York Times is sending out. Why is it sending out that message? It's not because they really could possibly believe, I think, that Mamdani poses a threat, that Mamdaniism is a threat to a Democratic sweep next year. In fact, it's just the opposite. This is the one guy who excites voters. This is the one guy who increases the number of congregants inside that supposedly big tent. He actually increases the size of that tent, the capacity of the tent, or the actual population inside the tent is what he's doing. Of course, Democrats should embrace him, but they're afraid he'll be successful. And that's what Trump is. Trump is saying, oh, I'm rubbing my hands. I can't wait to have to be able to use Mamdani as a weapon against the Democrats. It's just the opposite. He wants to scare you into not supporting Mamdani because he knows that the policies, the affordability, the rent freezes, which, by the way, again, this isn't perfect. Really, you can't solve America's problems in one city. You can't even solve New York's problems through the mayor of New York. You need to have the entire country working together to build a strong, vibrant economy that works for all. But in a city like New York, which is so rich, so big, has so much worldwide, not just a national, but global influence, yes, Mamdani can make big, important changes that will improve the quality of people's lives. And that's what scares Democratic elites. That's what scares Republicans. He could be successful. He could be the model. He could present a model to voters, to working class voters, how their country, their city, their town, their county can work better. He could be cited by other candidates. He could be the roadmap that could take us down, regardless of whether you're a Democrat or Republican. If you're an AIPAC sponsored, if you're corporate backed, he's a risk. He's a threat. He's a threat to the grift you've had going. So you see here in Long Island, district attorney is attacking her Democratic challenger as a twin with the supposed bogeyman, Zohran Mamdani. No, I have nothing to do with him. I'm not part. Now, I get it. Parts of Long Island are very conservative. And there is a real, quote, crime, tough on crime bias among people there. I get that. On the other hand, it's all kind of BS because Mamdani is not talking about defunding the police. He's talking about reallocating some funds to crime prevention as opposed to crime solving, which is actually an outstanding idea. And again, the fear among prosecutors too, and cops too. Well, wait, what if this works? We might not have to do as I actually don't really believe that. I think most cops do want less crime. I really think that. They may be conservative. They may hate those whom they perceive as coddling, quote, criminals, unquote. But I would think in general they're not for more crime, more work for themselves. I might be wrong. I don't want to besmirch them. But there's a whole ethos there. There's a whole kind of a ideology that's based on, we got to be no nonsense. We've got to, hit these people hard before they hit us. And that is just simply not borne out in terms of the way we can effectively reduce crime. The way we effectively reduce crime, we address poverty. We address homelessness. We increase and improve education. We make schools secure, safe places. We get guns off the streets. And only a little bit of that really can Mamdani do. So he is somewhat limited. But again, mayor of the city of New York is huge. He's successful. That's a big body blow to the corporate elites. So you see the New York Times absolutely repeating that corporatist talking point that somehow Mamdani is a threat to the Democrats, right? But he's only a threat if he loses. If he wins, he's a threat to all corporatists, to all oligarchs. So Times says Republicans nonetheless see Mr. Mamdani's rise as a political opportunity. How do they know that? They have no reason to believe that. Maybe that's what even some Republicans are saying. They're saying that it's the old jiu-jitsu principle. Let's use their strength as a weakness. We'll pretend that we really are happy that Mamdani is likely to be mayor. Maybe that will take him down. No. The last thing they want is someone who's going to raise taxes to the billionaires. The last thing they want is somebody who is going to, address the food desert problem in New York City, make public transportation a little more affordable, and take a little bit of the outsized profits that private equity accrues from renting out apartments. Take some of that out of the mix. That's what they're afraid of. They're afraid it will work. They're afraid Zohran Mamdani will make life better for poor, struggling, and working class Americans. And that's why they feel they have to destroy him, have to defeat him. Hopefully, perhaps, probably at this point, that effort will not succeed. It certainly looks like Zohran Mamdani is going to become the next mayor of the state of New York. Might not happen. There's certainly a good chance he won't be. I think the better chance is he will be. And let's just leave this with former New York City Congressman Steve Israel, who is, by the way, died in the wall. I believe he's a very staunch Zionist. He is not a Mamdani supporter. This is what he says. I think it's wasted energy. The Democratic Party would be better off much better off knocking on doors and canvassing voters rather than worrying about Zohran Mamdani. 100%. And what I would even add to that, although Israel doesn't say this, I would say, you know what? When you canvass those voters, listen to them, listen to what their concerns are, and try to figure out why, or maybe by doing that, you'll be able to garner just why Zohran Mamdani is so popular. And why, rather than even fretting about him, you should be embracing him. Which even Chris Cillizza, I was really astonished by this. Chris Cillizza, I believe he used to write for the Washington Post. He was a CNN contributor for many years. Now he has his own podcast. He said, hey, the Democratic voters, young voters especially, they love this guy. Why are you trying to kneecap him, separate yourself from him? Yeah, they're going to attack you as some sort of a socialist. Guess what? They're going to do that no matter what. It doesn't matter. That's what Republicans do. That's what conservatives do. They call Democrats socialists, Marxists, communists, pinkos. That's what they do, regardless of whether they are. So, to say, oh, we can't have a socialist because they'll call us a socialist. If they're going to call you a socialist no matter what, that's a terrible argument. And in fact, even the New York Times acknowledges it in their headline. Just outside New York City, Republicans are using Mamdani as an attack line for the 2026 midterms, much as they vilified the city in 22. So this is what they do. Zohran Mamdani had nothing to do with any 2022 campaigns. He was an obscure Queens Assembly member at that time. So they're just going to come up with anything. They throw everything against the sink and against the wall and hope it sticks. Zohran Mamdani could be the future, could provide, help build a much better future for the Democratic Party. They won't do it. They're not going to do it. They're not going to let that happen because the individual members of the party, especially the leaders of that party, are so are rewarded so richly by their loyalty, their fealty to corporate elites and what they want, to Zionist elites. But here is Brianna Joy Gray. I alluded to this video yesterday. I thought just alluded. I actually mentioned it when I was talking to Carlos. I think she has some really important things to say with James Fauntleroy about the role that the media plays in keeping people democratic.
I would like to get across, because one way that liberals do like sheep herding and
let me just stop that, because I said the media, but actually what she's really talking about here more, although not completely ignoring the media's role in this sheepdogging effort, but institutions like the one I used to work for, Our Revolution, Progressive, Democrats of America, and the like, they do this just as much as the social media influencers that she's talking about.
Thinking that like there's like better hopes on the way is to say, like, we just need to convince people. If you listen to like Pod Save or something like that, what you'll hear them say is, it's an uphill battle, but we just got to convince more people of X, Y, and Z. Incorrect. Everybody already agrees on all the good things. Everyone already agrees on Medicare for all. Everyone agrees on taxing the rich. Everybody agrees on a living wage. Everybody agrees Nancy Pelosi shouldn't be insider trading. Mm-hmm. Everybody agrees. Yeah. And the pretend, everybody agrees on Gaza, always, obviously. But the grift is convincing good liberals that they just got to walk around with a sign and like make people aware. This is also like the 501c grift. Like, we're making people aware of this issue. Like, let me get money to like raise awareness about, let me have a foundation to raise awareness. Let's have a dinner to raise awareness. Everyone's aware. And we all agree. But that's like a exit ramp from actually doing anything.
That is so correct, what she just said. That is the exact right analysis there. And she talked about the 501c3s, as I mentioned. There's no doubt. I was on a meeting yesterday, and I made the point that at our next meeting, we need to have a political candidate who is going to try to make things better, a Green Party candidate. And the pressure, there was a lot of pressure, oh no, we have to educate people. We have to educate people about Gaza. I said, this is a candidate who's against the genocide. This is the one candidate who's actually going to say it is a genocide and that he is going to take every step possible to separate our state from any support for Israel. And the response was, well, there's a time for that, but the time right now is to educate people. And we know. We just heard what Brianna Joy Gray said. 7% of Dems support support Israel right now. By the way, I'm sorry for that door slamming. That's what made me kind of jump and made the dog jump too. 7% of Democrats are supportive of Israel. We know, we get it. We don't need to educate people. In fact, it's boring and frustrating to keep hearing about. That's why I don't spend so much time. I mean, I give you the numbers because it's new. It's news and you got to hear it. But to just be like over and over, well, this is what Israel's doing and this is what, we get it. You can spend 5 minutes talking about that, but to spend an hour, no. What you do with that time is you have people who are proposing solutions. And the solution that I'm aware of is to elect those who are anti-Israel, who are anti-AIPAC, who are going to speak out against it, who are going to talk to the American people about what they're going to do so that their hard-earned tax money isn't being used to kill Palestinians, so that a resort on the Mediterranean can spring up on the unmarked graves of millions of Palestinians. That's the right message. That's how you win, is you come up with solutions that are persuasive, that are credible, and people who can implement them. And I don't frankly get why this is hard for people. It's very frustrating for me that it is so challenging. The same, by the way, with those people like the Pod Save bros, right? Because they're like, oh, well, we're a center-right country. A lot of people don't really understand. We might be a center-right country when it comes to issues like trans rights. Of course, that's true. On social justice issues, yes, Americans are often. When it comes to criminal law, we are a center-right country. I agree with that. But not when it comes to Medicare for all. Not when it comes to military adventures overseas. We're not center-right, and we're not center-left either. We're left. The problem is we're being inundated with right-wing messages, with militarist messages, with Zionist messages, with corporatist messages, and our political parties are corrupt. They're bought and paid for. In terms of the media, it's only going to get even. Yeah, see, the Pod Save Bros are like, well, it wasn't Obama's fault. We just had to make him be a little bit further to the left and everything. It's our fault. Yeah, we got Obama into office, but we didn't hold his feet to the fire as hard as we should have. No, it's Obama's fault that he signed off on those free trade deals. It's Obama's fault that he didn't fight much harder for a public option to expand Medicare to 55 and under or over. No, the politicians have to be responsible for what they don't do. Here's responsible statecraft. The media is only getting worse and worse and worse. Oracle execs love Israel, or maybe this job isn't for you. So in every media foray by Oracle, this is a company that Larry Ellison, I guess, founded. This is guys worth, I just saw this, $275 billion friggin' dollars. $275 billion. I think he's number 2 in the world after Musk, although I'm not sure if Tesla's dropped. I'm not really clear on all that. I don't really even care that much. But I mean, I don't care about the pecking order. I care about the fact that they've accrued this kind of wealth. And what Oracle's doing with that, well, they bought TikTok. TikTok has been viewed as, and I think correctly so, as a major source of anti-Israeli, pro-Palestine feeling. Many, many videos, many images shared on TikTok that show for all the world the cruelty, the barbarity of Israel, the human tragedy, the war crimes, the atrocities. It's all there on TikTok. And, Trump doesn't like that. Trump was very, very pleased. Now, I guess his buddy Ellison will take it over. Not the founder, Larry, but his son, Harlan. Is it Harlan? Harlan Ellison's a writer, so it's not Harlan. Harlan Ellison is a now dead writer who wrote really good science fiction and kind of was lots of different genres. So not just science fiction either, but that was a kind of a big part of it. So it's not Harlan, his son. His son is David. There you go, David. Harlan's sort of a cooler name than David, I think, by the way. Sorry if you're a David. Again, 240-242-5646. Would love to talk to you. Not seeing in the chat, hey, Ari, good to see all the love you're sharing for me, the Palestine flags and all that. Very much appreciated. Love Israel or get the hell out. Don't let the door hit you on the ass. Actually, what they've done is not even fired people who might express some criticism of Israel, at least not up front. What they've done is send them to the company psychologist. Oh, there's something wrong with you. You actually have some empathy for Israel's thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of victims. You have concern for them. Their lives matter to you. What the hell's the matter with you? That's the message at Oracle to its employees. That's the message at the company that just took over TikTok. If you care about Palestinian lives, there's something wrong with you. Safra Katz, former EV board chair, or current executive vice board chair. Does that make her number 2? Executive vice chair? Because the chair, is she number 2? Maybe she is. And former CEO, so she was right at the top. Safra said the company's commitment to Israel is unequivocal, and it is not shy about squelching criticism of Israel internally. So I'm sure they will have no trouble squelching criticism of Israel externally either at TikTok. What do we do about that? There's a side of me that's like, what are they going to do? It's like whack-a-mole. It'll go somewhere else. I don't broadcast on TikTok. I don't stream on TikTok, and I'm plenty critical of Israel on YouTube. So I hope that this humanity this outbreak of humanity that we do see on TikTok will find other outlets and be just as powerful, just as influential. I fear it will not be. And Oracle's $275 billion isn't being used just to take out TikTok as a source of extraordinarily well-deserved criticism of Israel, but also to turn CBS News into a propaganda outfit, a Hasbara outfit. Much as, by the way, Netanyahu told a bunch of influencers was his goal, right? We've got the next front is we got to take control of the media. Too many people are learning the truth about us, seeing the truth about us, and they're pretty horrified by it. We got to stop that. That's Bibi's message to influencers. And you can see it playing out right here. So it's kind of like a mediocrity, Bari Weiss. She was on Joe Rogan. She called Tulsi. She used some word to describe Tulsi, and then she was asked, well, what does that mean by Rogan? She had no idea. She called Tulsi a name. She didn't know what the heck that name meant. So who is she? She's 41 years old. She has no TV experience whatsoever. What she is, and the Times of Israel, incredibly excited by this. They're giddy, the Times of Israel, over Bari Weiss. She is a pro-Israel iconoclast. She's unshakable in her support for Israel. And that's why she got the job. That's it. They don't want anybody whose opinions might change, might morph. Hey, we can't even have a Charlie Kirk. You know, Kirk was really good. He was a good asset for a long time. But, you know, the guy wasn't Jewish. He had in the past, I guess, expressed some anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic statements, as he's alleged to have. I'm not even sure if he did, but he is alleged to have said that. And, you know, we can't have, you know, we can't risk that. So let's take a Jewish journalist whose entire career, built since she was a Columbia student, has been on seeing anti-Semitism where it isn't, on accusing people of being, anti-Semites, and conflating legitimate criticism of Israel with Jew hatred. That's who Bari Weiss is. By the way, she called Tulsi Gabbard an Assad toady. That was apparently a term that the Clinton campaign was using to describe her. A Russian asset, an Assad toady. And Rogan said, well, what do you mean by that? What do you even mean by toady? She didn't even know what a toady, I believe in that video, she struggled to define toady. This is a journalist. You know, toady is just somebody who does your bidding, right? Your toady, somebody who you have around who just says whatever you want them to say, a kind of a yes man or yes woman. So when Rogan said, well, you just called Tulsi Gabbard an Assad toady, like, what are you thinking about that? What do you mean by that? She didn't know she didn't know how to answer it. It's not that hard. Even I could have answered that. I don't agree with, I think what Tulsi Gabbard was proven to be correct. Assad was not proven to have gassed his own people. He probably did not do so. The atrocities that the West often attributed to him, he may have had nothing to do with, and there wasn't evidence to support the claims that he was killing his own people. But if you want to call her an Assad toady, you say, well, she's telling people that Bashar al-Assad is this wonderful humanitarian. You know, that's all you have to say. You know, it's a lie, but it would explain the claim that he's a toady. Wouldn't be true, but it would explain why she claims he's one. She couldn't even do that. This is supposed to be a newswoman. This is supposed to be a journalist. But she's picked ahead CBS News. That's a perfect recommendation for her. That she just insults people without even knowing what she's saying. It means she takes orders. She doesn't question. Somebody above her says, well, this woman is an Assad toady. Maybe someone from the Clinton campaign. Someone from Israel, a Zionist, called her and said, we got to take down Tulsi. Call her an Assad toady. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Whatever. I'll do it. The encomiums for her are just a laugh riot. The praise is so, it's not just over the top. It's utterly, completely absurd. And because it's from the times of Israel, you know she's a terrible choice, right? I mean, this is the paper of record for the Netanyahu regime. This isn't Haaretz, which has a legitimate claim as a, as a media with integrity, newspaper with integrity. What the Times of Israel calls her is a laugh riot. They analogize her to Edward R. Murrow and Walter Cronkite. She's supposedly the kind of person who speaks truth to power, like they did. Edward R. Murrow took on right-wing authoritarian Joe McCarthy. His biggest claim to fame, right, is that he reported on McCarthy from Congress and was scathing. McCarthy was the communist hunter. And he was a liar. He was a fabulist. He made things up about himself too. He was a bad guy. Those are the people that Bari Weiss protects, defends. She doesn't have there's more integrity in Edward R. Murrow's thumbnail than in all of Bari Weiss. Walter Cronkite, renowned, the man America trusts, because he did speak out against the Vietnam War. He did recognize the incredible cost in dollars and blood that horrible, wrong-headed, misguided war cost us. Bari Weiss doesn't belong in a sentence with Edward R. Murrow and Walter Cronkite, except if the sentence begins with, how far has CBS fallen? They do get one thing right in this article. She's described, her promotion is described as one of the most unorthodox appointments in broadcast journalism history. That is for sure the case. This is somebody, and I mentioned this before, no television experience whatsoever, virtually none. I mean, I guess she's been on a few shows, but she has none as a manager, none as a journalist, as a broadcast journalist. She's a writer, not a particularly good one. She's an editor. She is not no experience in broadcast journalism. They do call her a media company builder. She built that company with millions and millions from David Ellison. And basically what it was is a Substack. So again, it's absurd. The reason she got this, very, very clear. In the New Statesman, Ross Barkin, who's an excellent journalist, he's been doing really good coverage. I believe I'm right on this one. Zohran Mamdani. Why did she get the job? Blind support for Israel has muzzled Bari Weiss's free press. So the publication's ideology prevents it from covering Trump's failures, both with respect to Israel, obviously, and elsewhere. That's a perfect appointment. Somebody who will pull back anything, retract, keep from seeing the light of day any coverage of the truth. That's why Bari Weiss is in charge of CBS News. And it's important we understand this because we need to look elsewhere. We can't, because people are going to keep reading. Like, I read the Baltimore Sun. The Baltimore Sun is owned by the Sinclair Group, hard right, religious, fundamentalist company. I think David Sinclair is the owner. He's very much of an evangelical Christian. There's some news that's worth getting. They give you some facts. I do continue to subscribe to The Sun, but I read it very, very skeptically. The fact is, you can't read anything skeptically enough. If it's ultimately there to persuade you that the sky is green, then even if you know that, even if you fully are aware of its dishonest agenda, it's going to impact on you. So we can talk about it. It's important that we do so. We still have to acknowledge, we still have to be aware that it's going to have an influence, a very, very bad influence. So I'm going to play one last clip before we call it a program. I believe tomorrow it's going to be an Arlen Wednesday. But, you know, we see that the parties don't do what the American people want, right? I mean, you heard Brianna Joy say that. I introduced this segment by playing the clip where she said, hey, we all want Medicare for all. It's not like we have to educate people or convince people. They already want these good things. They want peace. They want an end to the genocide. People are there. And yet we still don't have them, right? The political class, those large and in charge, don't give us what we want, even though we live in ostensibly, purportedly a democracy. And it doesn't matter whether the people in charge are Democrats or Republicans, we don't get what we want. Not if there's any chance doing so would gore a rich man's ox. It just won't happen. So given that fact, you could be forgiven for saying, well, then why even bother with buying media? It doesn't matter what the people think. They don't get what they want. The media can tell them how bad it is in Gaza. People can be outraged, disgusted. The killing's going to continue until we decide to stop it. So why even bother taking complete charge of the media? Because what people learn, what lessons they learn from the media doesn't really matter. Well, Brianna Joy Gray explains that here. I thought it was worth playing this.
And so
You're right.
I would say, like, everyone agree, but this is what's dark. Just like Medicare for all, okay, we won the awareness battle about Gaza. It took 2 years and almost 1 million dead people, but here we are. Everyone's aware and mad at Israel. But the sick part is that just like everyone liking and wanting Medicare for all, there is no relationship to whether we get anything like Medicare for all. Everybody hating Israel bears no relationship to American foreign policy. So there's like this thing where obviously we've all read the stories about all the different ways that they're investing in. They bought TikTok, they bought CBS, the bot armies, all the things. They paid $8,000 a tweet to these influencers, all the things.
Yeah.
I think very little that has to do with wanting to persuade people, but it's to maintain the fiction that it's okay that we live in a democracy, that there's enough diversity of opinion out there that it doesn't make the government seem insane for choosing to continue its policy toward Israel.
Yeah, I think that's so correct. The fact that there's a lot of media that's pro-Israel doesn't change people from being anti-Israel. The fact that there's so much media that was pro-Ukraine war hasn't really convinced most Americans that we should be involved in a war in support of Ukraine. That hasn't happened. But the fact that there is that media out there, the fact that the New York Times, the Washington Post, CBS News, what have you, run stories that are directly counter to what the American people want provides a little bit of cover to the corporate elites, to the political elites, to say, hey, no, it's not true. You don't all want Medicare for all. See this op-ed that was in the New York Times? Yeah, it was written by a healthcare executive, but they make some really good points. See, there's really some diversity of opinion. The fact that you all say that you're horrified by all that bombing in Gaza, the children and the women being killed, well, Like, hey, Van Jones just went on, and he's a liberal. Van Jones is a liberal. He went on Bill Maher and he says, hey, those images are part of a Qatar Iran propaganda campaign. So there's really, it could go either way. You have a right to support Israel or a right not to. No, it's wrong to support Israel. But the fact that the media consistently, and now even more so, is going to provide and present to you only, or pretty much only, right-wing talking points, whatever facts taken out of context, isolated, could support their positions. The fact that they're going to do that isn't probably going to massively shift public opinion, although I wouldn't count that out completely. But what it's going to do is, again, give those in power the ability to say, yeah, well, maybe more people feel this way, but plenty of people feel that way. And I'm not going to just bend with the public. I'm not going to just bend with the winds of the public opinion. I believe that Israel has a right to exist. And I believe that Jews need a safe homeland. So even if a lot of people don't feel that way, I'm going to stand firm as a Israel supporter, so they can say that crap and they get away with it. Maybe a little bit for a little longer. In the end, maybe they won't be able to get away with it. And in the end, will all be dead. And everyone in Palestine who was there, up until a couple of years ago, will have been completely wiped off the face of the earth. And that's what we're looking at. That's what we got to figure out how to stop. All right, folks, that'll do it for me. Tomorrow should indeed be an Arlen Wednesday. Have a great afternoon. Thanks so much for being part of Halitics.